So here's a bit of a look at a CNC machine I made quite a few years ago, just to try things out. I'd been operating, proper industrial CNC machines for many years, and I'd heard about this Gerbil-based stuff that you can build. Seen a couple of videos, and I thought, I was bored at work. I actually built this at work on the workbench at work. Things were pretty quiet at work, and I was just turning bar stock. It was very boring, so afternoon shift, you got a bit of time on your hands, so I thought I'd just find out what this stuff was all about. This is long before I had a 3D printer or anything like that. So when I first had this build in mind, I was just going to build a bit of a plotter type thing, or I was going to try and hot wire cut foam with it for RC plane parts and whatnot. So I had no idea what these NEMA stepper motors were, or the power of them, or anything like that. These are NEMA 17 stepper motors. These rails, they're very light rails, they're only 8mm, I think they are. Basically CNC printer rails and stuff like that. When I was building this, funds were pretty tight, so I only bought the cheapest of stuff. And I just wanted to buy stuff that was easy to get, inexpensive, that was simple to put together, so everything's just bolted together. So basically, a lot of the parts just came from Bunnings. So obviously the MDF or whatever it is, bought that from Bunnings. The lead screws are just 1/2" all thread. And obviously the rails I just bought off eBay. They're only, I don't know, a few dollars each, not very expensive. The stepper motors at the time were only, $5 or $10 each, not very expensive. It's Arduino with a CNC shield on top. Well, wire management has got a lot to be desired, but I was just sort of buggerizing around with it, wasn't caring too much, so it didn't matter at the time. And I just plugged in a 12-volt power supply, obviously a USB straight to your computer. So I'm running Gerbil on it. And yeah, so I first started off with just a soldering iron, trying to cut out some foam with it, but I had trouble with temperature control. It would just be too aggressive all the time. So then I changed mounting around, and I had a Dremel tool on here, and then I started cutting timber with it. The Dremel tool worked quite well on this. Just take it easy and it worked quite well, but the bits for it were ridiculously expensive. So then I ended up chucking on the cheap router, because the bits are only a quarter of the price, or less than what they are for a Dremel tool. And this is just starts hanging out too far out the front, because these are only very light ways, and it sort of overpowers it. It's not that great. The Dremel tool was a lot more compact and tighter against it, and didn't push as hard, so it worked a lot better. The accuracy of the machine, I was quite surprised, even though it's only rolled cheap all thread. And I did organise a bit of a backlash eliminator underneath here somewhere. On the cross slide here I didn't do much, but anyway, it sort of holds a tolerance in timber to about 1/2 mm. Depends on how you run your finish passes and your roughing passes and whatever else you're trying to do, but it does work okay. I haven't got much for thrust in the bearings and whatnot. I just had these cheap old second-hand alternator bearings laying around, so that's what I've used. All the mounting for the motors is dodgy and cheap. Obviously now I've got a 3D printer. I could 3D print up proper brackets, and you get better bearings, and well, you would get actual ball screws. But with these size motors, I think a lot of the smaller size ball screws have about a 5mm pitch on them, or something like that, and these motors would not be able to do that, because there's such fine pitch. Your rapid speeds are very slow, but it gives the motor more torque basically to do the work. So you'd need at least NEMA 23 motors if you had the proper ball screws, I think. And yeah, the drivers I had no trouble with heating. Some people did, I think. You can get heavier drivers for these too. They just plug in to the shield. They were never an issue for me, but I wasn't drawing much current, I don't think. And yeah, the Gerbil system worked all right. If I could be bothered, I'd fire it up and give it a run. Might not, I'm not sure. We'll see how we go. But yeah, it like I said, everything was just all bolted together. It was just to try out the whole stuff and see what it was like. And I was always been meaning to build a bigger machine, but never got round to it. Might do it one day. But if anyone's interested at all, the worst thing about it is I've got to keep going around and torquing everything up. If I use Nylox, it might be better, but I think the whole timber frame just works things a bit, so you've got to keep an eye on that. Obviously, bits of ugly timber, that was just what was laying around at work, off pallets and whatever else. But yeah, I think the whole build, by the time this timber, it's not real expensive, but by the time you buy, I think there are like 2 or 3 sheets in this. And then I've got bits of aluminium underneath, bits of square tube in here, and bolts. You use a lot of bolts when you're bolting together. All up with all the parts. It was at least over $100. Might be between $100 and $150 all up. But it was good learning, and now I know the system works and all that. I think it was about 3-4 years ago I built this. So I haven't done an updated version yet, but maybe one day. But anyway, if anyone's bored and want to watch a video on something silly, there you go. So this is UGS I've got running here. I haven't set anything up properly, nothing's calibrated because this is a different laptop to what I was running it on before. Just make a couple of movements. So nothing too exciting, as you can see. I'm pretty sure I had it moving a lot faster before, but I haven't set any of my step sizes or anything. So I have to do that to get things to work properly, because you've got to take a measurement on how far it moves, and then you put in how far it should move, and then put in measure how far it does move, and then you change the settings. I've forgotten how it all does it, but it does work. But yeah, it's all very simple once you get it sorted. It's been so long since I've used it, I can't quite remember. But yeah, there you go.